Welcome to Threats Manager Studio piece by piece. I'm Simone Curzi and this presentation introduces 10 tips and tricks on Threats Manager Studio. So let's start with the first. Now it may not be really a tip, but it's definitely some of the frequently asked questions. How can you create a flow between two stencils? So let's drag and drop two different entities inside the drawing pane, and let's show what happens to the mouse pointer when I move it on top of one of those stencils. So you need to move on top of the source stencil for the flow, and if you do that, you see that the mouse pointer changes to a little hand. When it does, you can click and drag, and this creates the flow. Now, if instead you are on top of the margins of the stencil, you can click and drag, and this will move the stencil itself. So this is what happens in the middle, drag and drop to draw the flow. And you can also create a return flow in the same way. So this is possible. What you cannot do is to create two different flows because it doesn't stick on top of an existing flow. So from a source and target, you can have a single flow. Okay, that's the first tip. Now let's move to the second one, maximizing the drawing pane. Sometimes you need to have more space. You need to see more of your threat model because it's big. How to do that? Well, of course, there is a possibility to use the zoom. So you can click zoom out, and this will give you more space. But this comes at the cost of having the flow less readable. How can I address this? The idea is to get more space in the drawing pane by collapsing all the different elements that are surrounding the pane itself. So for instance, we have the stencil pane to the left, and this stencil pane is separated by a bar that you can move to get more or less space. But also you can click the bar and it will collapse. To restore the original size, you simply have to click again on this separation bar. The same goes for the bar separating the item editor and the drawing pane. You can change the size like that, and you can click to collapse. Also, the ribbon works as a normal ribbon. So what you can do is to double click on any tab in the ribbon, and this will collapse entirely the ribbon itself. You can click once to get access to the different buttons, and they will work like that, but then the ribbon will collapse again. So to restore the ribbon to the original size, you have to double click on it. And this is the second tip. Third tip, fixing broken diagrams. So let's move to a diagram like this one. You see that in this diagram we have DevOps user stencil that is isolated. It looks like it's not connected to anything. But then you will notice that there is a flow that is Jenkins login that is apparently not connected to anything. So what to do? Is that normal? How to handle this? This is a problem that sometimes happens due to the different resolution of the various screens, the so-called IDPI. So this is due to a bug that will be fixed fully soon in Threats Manager Studio. How can you fix it now without having to draw again the whole diagram? Well, there are a couple of ways really, but essentially the idea is to move one of the different items that are involved in the flow itself. You don't need huge moves, you need a tiny move. So for example, I can click the trace boundary containing the target stencil, which is Jenkins CI/CD, and then I can move it. You see, a couple of times, and that has restored the flow. So now the flow is okay. I can save the diagram and everything will be corrected. I could have also moved the DevOps user as well, and that would have addressed the problem as well. And that was the third tip. Let's move to the fourth, and I can open a threat model, like for example this one. Okay, so this is a complex threat model, and I can actually get a look at that, work with that, but it may be a little more complex than it should be, a little less readable than it should be. How to make it a little more readable? The best way is definitely to move the flows yourself to make them better and increase the readability. Another way though is to use automatic layout. Automatic layout is not available everywhere to every user, because it depends on the execution mode. Essentially, it is available in Pioneer and Expert mode. So you can click automatic layout. It does asks if you are sure, because in various cases that may actually get things a little worse. And in fact, this is what we get here due to the automatic layout. Is it better? Not necessarily, but it's a starting point essentially that you can then move and to improve the diagram. Okay, so let's move to the next one, copying and pasting. Copy and pasting. It is possible to copy stencils, to copy shapes. So let's create a simple threat model like this. What you can do with this threat model to copy it is to essentially select all, Control A, then Control C or copies, and then you can, for example, create a new diagram and then using the context menu, paste. This creates the copy and pastes the threat model. So this works also if you select pieces of the threat model, and it allows to copy and paste them to a different diagram. You cannot paste on the same diagram because the stencils are already there. So the next one is copy and paste threat events and mitigations. So let's open another example. The previous one. If I click here and I click, you see that there are a number of different mitigations here. So what I can do if I have another web application and I want to have the same threats and mitigations. I don't have to create all the threats and mitigations in this. What I need to do is to copy all threat events from the source, select the target, and paste the threat events. This copies all the threat events and all the mitigations from the source to the target. So this is a very convenient way to do a lot of work in a very simple way. Sometimes you need to change the icons, like in this case, this second web app has an icon that doesn't describe what it is. So we want to change it. And there are a couple of ways to change the icon of a shape. The first one is to use the context menu, change entity icon, and this opens the select image page. We can do the same by double-clicking the icon in the item editor. In both cases, the same select image page dialog is opened. Now you need to change the icon, and there are 3 different sizes: 64 per 64 pixels, 32 per 32 pixels, and 16 per 16. This is a mistake here. Okay, so what should you do? You need to double click the size that you want to change. Then you need to go where you have icons. I have here a set of different image icons. Now the tool is able to handle different type of files: PNG file, JPEG, and SVG. This contains typically SVG files. So let's go to web service, app service, OK, and OK. And this changes the icon. So this is essentially how you can change the icon of a stencil. The next one is about getting an image of the diagram, like this one. Let's consider a situation where you want to create essentially pass the image of your diagram. Now, before taking a picture, creating a snapshot, you may want to remove the markers. So this is also another tip. Clicking all markers, you have a cleaned up drawing of your diagram. Then you can click copy to clipboard or copy to file, and this allows you to create a picture. So with copy to clipboard, then I can click MS Paint, Ctrl V, and you have your image. Or you can copy to file, desktop, picture, save, and now you have your picture. So this is what you can do. Okay, so next one, removing items and how to cope with mistakes. Let's imagine that in this case you want to remove from this diagram this second web app, and then you simply select it and you click the cancel button. So by doing that with the delete button, you have removed the shape. But have you really removed that shape? So let's go to home and let's go to process. And by any means, the web app is still there. So this is the one that was previously, and this is the one that I've added. In fact, this one, as you can see from the tooltip, is not associated to any diagram, while the previous one is associated to diagram contours perform solution. So having clicked the delete button, it hasn't removed really the process. So to manage this, you need to click remove process, and now the process will be removed. Now, what happens if you instead, by mistake, you go to remove from model? The same that we have done with remove with the delete button was remove from diagram. So if we do the remove from diagram, we would remove from the diagram, not from the model, as we did for the second web app. But what if we remove from model and we click yes? It will be lost. At this point, you need to be sure that you don't save, or that if you save, you use the smart save and you recover at that point the previous version. So that will allow you to recover from that sort of mistakes. For the last tip for today, let me create a new diagram. Now let's move to the last example. Let's create a new diagram, and let's create two different stencils. In this case, the idea is that we have a user working with some server system. And then what we want is to associate a diagram. So the server is a complex piece of software, and we want to drill down really to threat model that server in a way that would allow us to get further details about how it works and how it can interact even with external systems. So it makes sense to use this functionality called associate diagram that allows to create a new diagram in this case and associate to the server stencil. Now the relationship is between the stencil and the diagram. Different diagrams may have different stencils associated. Each stencil can be associated only to a diagram, and instead a diagram can be associated to multiple stencils. In fact, you can assign not only a new diagram to a stencil, but you can assign also existing diagrams. So let's do that, and this has created a new diagram. So I can now create something like that. Executor data base, and the executor gets data, store data in the database, retrieve data from the database, and pushes also data to the on-premises systems, something like that. Now, if I return to the original diagram, I can see that the shape is changed somehow. In fact, the server stencil now has this tiny icon here. And this is important because what I can do with this tiny icon is I can click here. And if I click on that icon representing the diagram, now I'm finally in the diagram, in the linked diagram, moved there. So what are the different possibilities? I can associate a diagram, I can disassociate a diagram, or I can show associated diagram. So this is another way to jump to the original diagram. As you can see, I cannot return to the original diagram from an associated, to the original stencil, sorry, from an associated diagram, because it may have multiple stencils associated, and they may be presented in different diagrams, so it will not make sense. This is the last tip for today. So thank you for going through this presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. Please, if you liked it, mark it as a like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you and have a great day.